You're not trying hard enough. That's the problem, right? You've been telling yourself that recently. Well, if I would just try harder, I just need to be trying hard. Me and my laziness is the problem here. I would like to offer you a different perspective. Maybe if there is an issue, something in life that you're trying to accomplish, a routine you are trying to get going, something positive, something that would move your life or your family's life forward, and it hasn't been happening, maybe the problem is not you. We live in a culture, and especially certain segments of the culture, that expect perfection out of you, and with no recognition for the fact that you are living in an unnatural societal environment. You are living without a village. You are living probably without a support system. And it takes none of that into consideration and just says, yeah, if you're not hitting this standard of motherhood, if you're not hitting this standard of beauty, if you're not hitting this standard of being a wife, being a friend in your career, the issue is that you're not trying hard enough. I am here to say it's time to shatter that paradigm and consider that maybe the issue is that something external, your environment, needs to change. You need to amass resources to help you and accept this quote unquote fault that is preventing you from doing whatever it is you want to do. And that is the topic of today's fine episode. We will talk about that. I also have a couple of funny stories for you. And let me tell you before we really jump into the podcast, this episode is, well, Caitlin, I have a question for you. Our executive producer, Caitlin here. On this podcast, on the Jen Fulwiler Show, does the grind ever stop?
Never.
Never. Never. If you suspect at any point in this particular episode that I am intoxicated, if you're like, Jen's not doing her intermittent sobriety right now, we can tell. That one was pretty obvious. I want you to know that is actually not the case. I am tired to the point that it is akin to being on an ayahuasca trip. I just read an article that Elon Musk and all his buddies, Joe Rogan, all these guys, they microdose ketamine for like whatever, because it helps them be creative. It's like being on ketamine and ayahuasca. I'm actually tired to the point that it has come full circle, and now I have new energy and insights from the hallucinatory nature of the state of my brain right now. This can't be the Jen's Homeric travel voyage podcast, so I won't burden you with all the details, but suffice it to say, we are recording this on a Tuesday. Yesterday, Monday, after a long weekend of photo shoot, I did comedy at a private event for the Guiding Star Project, which is incredible. So happy to help them with their mission. Monday, I was supposed to go home. And my flight got delayed to the point that I was definitely going to miss my connection. No other flight paths to Austin. So I just went back to the hotel. I hung out with my friend Lino Rulli and his wife Jill. That was very nice. So, but I was stuck I was in Minneapolis. So I was supposed to be home Monday, but I did get stuck there overnight Monday night. So kind of a big deal, went to the airport with all my luggage, and it was a lot of luggage because of the photo shoot. I just had kind of a psychological break deciding on the outfits for that, and I just brought my whole wardrobe. I actually had to bring 2 big suitcases because I was melting down about it. So I get all that to the airport Monday. I have to take it all back to the hotel. I'm stuck there overnight. Now I bring you to this morning. This morning, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get up, I'm getting ready, and I get this notice that my flight is now canceled. So I'm a solution-oriented person. I take massive action. So I pulled up the app of another airline. I bought a ticket on that airline for a flight that boarded in 1 hour, and I flew home on a different airline because I am resourceful. What I'm trying to tell you, friends, is that I got 3.5 hours of sleep last night. Part of that was on me. Okay, I did get sucked into a Netflix documentary. I can't blame this all, because you're like, wait, you found out Monday morning that your flight was canceled. You were hanging out with Lino and Jill. So wait, where does the 3.5 hours sleep? Like, how can you blame the airline for that? True, touche. That was 100% on me. But I thought I would be getting back on a certain flight path where I'd have this long nap and all of that. Anyway, I've had 3.5 hours of sleep. I've had a crazy travel day. And yet this podcast doesn't stop. The grind doesn't stop. And I will have you know that I was using the mental techniques that we talked about in one of the other, I forget which podcast episode, but in a recent podcast episode, I talked about when you have things go wrong during travel or during anything else, just look at it like it's an odds game. Anything you do in life is an odds game, and 1 out of 20, 1 out of 100, you're going to have that bad day occasionally. Now, it would seem like this slot machine is stacked against me because I've had a few rough travel days recently. But I did just look at it like, yep, this happens. I'm blessed to have a life where I can travel a lot. This is just one of those trips, so I don't need to make meaning out of this. I don't need to tell epic stories about it. It's just, this happens sometimes. So I will say that did help me not totally lose my mind while all of this was happening. So I practice what I preach here on this fine show. Welcome to the Jen Fulwiler Show, coming to you from Austin, Texas. My name is Jen Fulwiler. I am a stand-up comic, best-selling author, and mom of 6. I had 6 babies in 8 years. Yes, I did. This podcast is where you learn the art of the village hustle. That is being a hot girl boss who knows that love and family and community are the foundation of all true success. Men, you're welcome to listen to You Can Be Hot Boy Bosses by listening to this podcast. I don't want you to feel excluded from this fine program. Caitlin is our executive producer, and we publish new episodes every Wednesday morning. And I do want you to know that when we record these, Caitlin brings her 4 young children over and her dog, which combines with my 6 kids and our dog. So right near this studio, we have 2 dogs and 10 kids. Lest you wonder, is Jen practicing what she's preaching?
Absolutely.
Is she in some skyscraper? You know, you guys probably imagine me in my, like I have my supervillain headquarters on the 28th floor of a skyscraper. Oh, no, we've got 10 kids and 2 dogs just about to bang down this door at any given moment. So we are absolutely living this. Don't forget, my Chicago show is July 30th. I said the wrong date multiple times, which was great. I mean, I was in my wrong date for my Chicago show era in May and early June. So please spread the word. If you know people in Chicago, please make sure that they know that the show is actually, Caitlin, is it July? It's the 30th, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's July 30th. I said the 29th. That is my husband's birthday. That's why that date sticks in my mind. It is July 30th. It is Chicago. It's going to be a special taping. Very excited about it. So tell any Chicago area friends. Jen said the wrong date for her show. Make sure you know when it is. And Caitlin is so sweet. She told me later, she said, yeah, when you said it, I was wondering, I thought that was the wrong date, but she didn't want to butt in, which I thought was so sweet. And I told her, no, of course, you can always jump in. This podcast is like how you prevent terrorism at airports. If you see something, say something. You know, like if it seems like Jen is, you know, starting to say, like, let's say on some episode, it's like Jen seems to genuinely be perhaps having a trauma response here, or maybe she was drinking before this one, and I should really jump in and do something. If you see something, say something, Caitlin. That's the motto of this podcast. Also, keep your iTunes, Apple Podcast reviews coming. They are the air that I breathe. They are my everything. I read each one personally. Joe reads each one personally, and I appreciate them so very much. Okay, so I want to begin by telling you, this is a really funny story to me. I haven't told you this yet, Caitlin, so you can enjoy this with the listeners. I was reading the book. Okay, because I have a travel day, I did not prep this part of the podcast as much as I should have. And I need to think if there are any legal issues. Caitlin, what are the laws regarding slander? What, like, can we ask AI that, like, what is slander? Because I prepared. I forgot to say. Wait. Hang on. I forgot to say something in the setup button. If you're a new listener, we get to the main topic in the second half of the show. So that topic that I set up at the beginning, we will get to that. It's in the second half of the show. Remind me to say that. That's it. If you see something, say something. Remind me to say that.
All right.
I don't think it is slander. I mean, if someone was there and it really happened and it's true, just because it's like not the greatest story about them, you can say that, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I think that you can. And yeah, Caitlin and I.
As long as you can admit that it's not true, right?
No, it's true.
Oh, it is true.
It is true. It is. No. It's like if you share. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like, well, you shouldn't. I mean, actions have consequences.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No.
So I prepped the main topic, which we will get to in the second half. But this story, I didn't. I actually meant to research. Okay, whatever. Well, I think it'll be good because I don't mean any ill will towards this person actually at all. But I just have. It's just such a funny story. I just have to tell you. So. Okay, how do I set this up? I was listening to, you guys know I love my little personal development books about motivation, about goals. If I can find one where a 25-year-old man who has experienced nothing in life yells at me about being lazy and talks about how he takes the stairs instead of the elevator and that's how he stays in shape, I read a lot in that genre for whatever reason. We don't know why I'm so attracted to that genre. But occasionally I find some real gems, books that talk to you about organizing your life, about leadership. You know that I strongly believe every parent is a leader. If you are a parent, you need to read a few books on leadership. It will completely transform your parenting experience. Occasionally I find some real gems, and this was one of them. The book is called The Gap and the Gain. One of the things I like about it, I find this very refreshing, that the main author of it, this guy, Dan Sullivan, he has 6 children, and the oldest 3 they adopted from foster care. And he mentions in the book that the oldest 3 had some needs that they needed to deal with, some additional needs that often comes from foster care adoption, things like that. So I highly respect that this is someone who knows a bit about the real challenges of a real life and how, you can't always do your whatever gym routine right at the perfect time when you have people who need things from you, whatever. So I'm just reading this book. It's called The Gap and the Gain. And it's good. It's a solid little book about the mentality of staying in what they call the gain, meaning look at how much you have gained, like look at how much you have accomplished rather than your ideals, your perfection that is on the horizon. You're going to laugh so hard when you realize the story I'm ultimately telling you has nothing to do with this, but I just want to tell you what the book's about. So they make the point in the book that those of us who are kind of type A driven workaholic personality types, we always tend to have this ideal that we are going for, but that's kind of like the horizon, meaning it's always out there and it's always in the distance because we are always upping our standards. We're always upping ideals. But for these types of people, for people like me, I mean, it can lead to depression and feeling like you're not accomplishing enough and anxiety and things like that because it just makes you feel like you're never getting there. You're not doing enough. So that's the premise of the book, about you need to live in the gain. And so Dan Sullivan, the author, he's the one who reads the book. He talks through the book about how he'll ask his kids, let's say when they come to dinner and they say, we don't like what mom is serving for dinner. He actually says to them, are you living in the gap or the gain? Because if you lived in the gain, you'd say, at least we have food. At least we have food at all. Like that's living in the gain. Living in the gap is, this isn't the perfect type or whatever of food that I wanted. And I think that's a really interesting strategy. I have my approach is called the scream and the swearing. And it's like, wow, once again, why do I even cook around here? Fine, let's just all let our health waste away. We'll just do McDonald's every night if that's what people want. People aren't going to eat my cooking. So that is an interesting strategy, to ask your kids if they're living in the gap or the gain. Okay, so I'm just in this book. You have to imagine, I'm in this book, and I am listening and I'm receiving. I'm receiving its wisdom. And then the author, Dan Sullivan, says something that made me laugh so hard. I have not really stopped laughing about it. Okay, so listen. So just imagine me. I'm driving. I think we were driving to Houston. Oh, we were driving for the prison ship trip. We were driving to Houston, or as you guys call it, a cruise. I was driving to pay to be imprisoned on a cruise ship. Okay, so I'm listening to it. Listen. Oh, I forgot to set up Bluetooth. All right, let me fill. So this is my radio training coming into play. So yes, I was listening to this book on the drive, where I would be told what to do by Royal Caribbean and end up on a beach where I almost died of heat stroke and could not leave, because that's what cruise excursions are like. It's like, well, to understand cruise excursions, it's like, when you are incarcerated in a communist prison, they let you walk around the yard for a set amount of time. And let's say you're in Siberia and you're like, I don't want to be in the yard anymore. This weather is horrible and it's about to kill me. I don't want to be in the yard anymore. And they beat you with a stick and they're like, you shut your mouth. You have 48 more minutes of yard time before you can get back in. And there's going to be a long line to get back in. That's a cruise ship excursion. Okay, so I was listening to The Gap and the Gain. All right, here's what I was listening to. All right.
But now that you have this framework and language, you can call it out when you see it. On several occasions while I was writing this book, Tucker Max, my editor, would tell me that I had slipped into the gap. Literally just this morning, I emailed him about my desires for this book, and he said, are you in the gap or the gain? A few weeks ago, I was cleaning out my garage, and I went into the gap big time. Our kids are...
it just happened. I did not even know that I would have that much of a reaction. Caitlin can attest. Coffee was almost spewed. Can I just hear it again? I'll tell you why. I just for my own. I just have to hear this again for my own pleasure. Okay.
But now that you have this framework and language, you can call it out when you see it. On several occasions while I was writing this book, Tucker Max, my editor, would tell me that I had slipped into the gap. Literally just this morning, I emailed him about my desires for this book, and he's...
Okay. So he refers to his editor.
We're not getting through this one.
He refers to his editor, Tucker Max, who's a pretty famous guy. Some of you guys might know who Tucker Max is. It's so funny to me to hear this, like, Tucker Max asked me if I was living in the gap or the gain. Well, friends, okay. Let me start by saying this. I like Tucker Max. He has changed his life. But Tucker Max and I came up in the same kind of online circles. Back in the day, he has a book called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, where it just chronicled his endless debauchery. I mean, sleeping with so many women, he couldn't even count, just partying. He was on an MTV. He had his own MTV reality show where all I saw of it was he was like vomiting behind a bar. I mean, that was like his whole thing, was how hard he's partied. So he has now changed his life. He's a family man. He's doing lots of really positive work. He's being very vulnerable about opening up about how past traumas that he's resolving. So I want to emphasize, I so respect the place that he is in now. But I almost spewed coffee all over this studio hearing about Tucker Max tell someone, are you living in the gap or the gain? Because I have a story for you about a time that my husband almost put Tucker Max in the gap, in a very deep gap. So back in the day, our friends used to, this is when Joe and I think we were not married. Joe and I were dating, and we had some friends. One of Joe's lawyer friends, actually, he was a lawyer. He put together a pub crawl that was a little different. In this pub crawl, we would do this about once a quarter. We would dress up as clowns, and he would rent a full-sized yellow school bus and hire a driver, and the yellow school bus would take us to different bars, and we would do shots and do a lot of drinking and then get back on the bus. The local establishments hated it and tried to have it shut down, and it turned into this legal thing. And what's funny, it was mostly lawyers on the bus, so they could not beat the clown bus. The clown bus was undefeated, but the local establishments tried to find laws that are like, can 20 clowns walk into my establishment and start doing shots? Like it seems like it should be legal, but there are illegal, but there are actually, we found out, no laws against it. But they hated it because, these clubs spend all this money trying to look cool and look like very chic establishments. And what they do not want is for the local hot people to walk by and be like, ooh, should we go to Euphoria Dance Club? And it's like, psh, 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 inside. And then you look, and it is filled with clowns. Literal clowns. They hated us. And so that there was tension with that. There was also tension. What's funny is I started getting angry about clown night because people would start asking me for my business card. I had a guy one time walk up to me and say, hey, my kid has a birthday coming up. Could I get your business card? I was so offended. I was like, excuse me, sir. I only dress up like a clown to get wasted. I would never do this professionally. This is so embarrassing. So I was getting real sick of that because clearly this was designed by men, that women only go out of doors to look hot. And there's no way to be a sexy clown. I tried everything to be a sexy clown, and you just can't. And so I was like, it was like trying to put a cat on a leash, get me into clown night. I was like, sexy vampire night. Sure. I'll get in a school bus, rent like a hearse, for sexy vampire. I'll do that. Obviously, I'll just stay home. If I'm not going to look hot, I'll just stay home. That was my philosophy when I was in my 20s. I mean, honestly, not a ton has changed now, but okay. So there was a core group of friends that we called it the clown crawl. Let me tell you also, I do not promote drunkenness. Even less do I promote drunkenness when you are dressed as a clown. That's just embarrassing to be falling down drunk. I mean, yeah. I mean, we had run-ins with the cops. It was not good. It was, yeah. We should have found something else to do with our time. So it was clown night, and Tucker Max got on the clown bus because he somehow knew our friend who organized clown night. So Tucker Max and a couple of his friends get on the clown bus, and he has I remember he was wearing an inflatable like rubber duck, like a pool toy on him. Yeah. So he gets on the bus and is, of course, true to form, causing a ruckus. Again, this is the old him. From what I understand, he's in the game now. I think he was living in the Gap at this time. So he gets on the clown bus, and he and his friends are very drunk, and they're being very rowdy. And it was really more his friends than him. But his friends were not the best human beings. So we go to this one bar. It was like a country saloon. So it's us, we're in Austin. So it's a bunch of cowboy type people and the clowns. And I actually think I was going to say this was Tucker, but because I'm not positive and I didn't research slander laws, I will say it was probably mostly his friends. They were going around to the women in the group and groping them, and just blatant sexual harassment. This was way before Me Too, when men were they just had different ideas. So I mean, they were just openly grabbing certain parts of women's anatomy, and yeah, it was really pretty egregious. And so there were probably, I don't know, 20, 25 of us total, and so this made my then boyfriend, Joe, livid, because it didn't happen to me, but he felt like I was next on the clown grabbing list. So he goes up, and you have to remember that he's dressed as a clown. He has on a rainbow wig and a red nose. He goes over to Tucker Max, who has on, I think it was like an orange clown wig, and has a rubber, the pool toy, and it's a ducky. It's like a little ducky pool toy. And Joe can't get too much in his face because the inflatable pool toy is like putting distance between them. He can't get all up in his grill. And Joe turns to, and everyone's been drinking, and Joe turns to Tucker and his two friends, and this is really iconic how he handled this. He said, "My girlfriend is one of the women in this group, and I'm not going to tell you which one she is. But if you grab her, you guys are going to get a beat down that you won't even believe." And by the way, Joe has grown too. He probably wouldn't do this today. Well, actually, okay, whatever. And Tucker's friends are, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" I mean, it almost started right then. And so they got in a verbal altercation, and then Joe went back to our friend who organized this, and this is how Joe's friends are. So this friend of ours, his name was JD. He was casually having a drink at the bar, and he didn't see any of this. Again, also dressed like a clown. So Clown Joe walks over with his red clown shoes. That's another thing. When you're trying to get in someone's face, Joe found it's actually hard because he's trying to get up in his face because you know how men are when they're about to throw. It's like, it's like chest to chest, like yelling. But if one of you has a rubber ducky pool toy around your waist and the other has big red clown shoes, it's actually hard to have a verbal altercation. So okay, so he goes back over to JD and says, "Hey, Tucker Max and his friends are living in the Gap." No, I'm kidding. That's from that book. Okay, no, he says Tucker Max and his friends are grabbing the women here, and he's like, "Hey, sorry, but I told them that they're going to get a beat down if they grab, if they end up groping my girlfriend." And JD, this is such a Texan man response. He didn't even look up from his beer. He just said, he didn't take his clown nose off, nothing. He just said, "Yeah, I didn't want to throw down tonight, but if we have to, we have to. Yeah, where are they?" And it just so casually, because he thought the fight was about to start. He's like, yeah, where are they? Let's beat them down, sure. And Joe was like, "Well, let's give him one more chance." And what's crazy is Tucker and his friends ended up going outside and they were going to rejoin us, but they went outside and they ended up getting arrested for something else. Oh, that's right, because he had a bullhorn and he was yelling in people's faces with a bullhorn. And from what I heard, now this is slander. So hit the possible slander jingle bells. This allegedly. Oh, that's what it is. That's what journalists do to get around it. The word I was looking for was allegedly. Allegedly, Tucker Max got in the face of an officer of the law. Ooh. And was yelling at him with his bullhorn. The officer of the law was pretty chill about it and told him to stop. And with the bullhorn, Tucker was like, "What are you going to do about it?" Allegedly. And he got thrown into a paddy wagon. Allegedly. I don't know if that's exactly how it played out. This was many years ago. This wasn't like 2 weeks ago. I mean, this was back in the day. And so Tucker Max was dragged to jail dressed like a clown after narrowly missing a beatdown from my husband and his friends who were dressed like Bozo the Clown. So
now that you have this framework and language, you can call it out when you see it. On several occasions while I was writing this book, Tucker Max, my editor, would tell me that I had slipped into the Gap. Literally just this morning, I emailed him about my desires for the...
When I heard that, I was like, I remember another time Tucker Max slipped into the Gap.
In the Gap.
When if by Gap you mean police paddy wagon for drunk sexually harassing clowns, he was in the Gap. But you know what? So here, friends, listen, this is an inspiring story for you. This is Tucker Max now lives in the Gain. Inspiring music, and actually not the inspiring inspiring music. This is what this podcast is for, to encourage you. Friends, if you have been dressing up like a clown and doing fireball shots chased with Jaeger and tequila shots, and if you've been sexually harassing women while dressed like a clown, there is hope for you. You've been living in the gap. And if you focus on gratitude and positivity, like Tucker Max, you can change your life and you can step into the gain. This is all possible for you. You don't have to be a drunk clown in a police paddy wagon anymore. A new life can await you. That's how is this podcast free with that kind of inspiration? We don't know, but so that was just
way
that
too serious for me.
That was a gem. That was that was a tough thing going on the prison boat. I still haven't recovered from it, but there were sometimes when you're having a tough time. Like being imprisoned on a luxury cruise, when you're suffering. It's like me and the people persecuted in war-torn countries. I mean, we're all kind of experiencing the same thing. Me on a cruise, them living in a war zone. And what's important is that you will see God being with you in little moments. In little, like, it'll just be, like that. That made me smile more than I smiled that entire week. I'd be standing in line again because I just got out of one line and like now it's time to stand in another line. Trying to track towels so that we don't get charged $25 for the quote unquote free towels. And I would just smile and I would just think of that. And it would give me hope that we can truly all change, because Tucker Max does a lot in that he does something in publishing now. So he actually helps a lot of these really positive people put that sort of positive stuff out there. And he actually wrote something very moving about how he did one of those, maybe it was ayahuasca, but he did some drug thing to heal from trauma and feel better, and he was very vulnerable about it. So it was hilarious and then also inspiring to hear that. So when you're in a war zone, or worse, on a cruise ship, you can look for little moments that you see God is with you. And it doesn't mean that he is instantly going to remove this suffering. It doesn't mean he's going to make the lines go away. It doesn't mean he is going to make people with vulgar tattoos of naked women get out of your face and stop being around you. It doesn't mean he's going to cut the 7-hour excursion short. I mean, that's something you're just going to have to go through that. But he will show you that he is with you. And for me, honestly, that little Tucker Max name drop, I laughed about that for a solid day. And that was all I had. That was all I had when I was imprisoned on the cruise ship. So, okay, let's get to the main topic. Don't forget, little quick promo. Seriously, the Brain.fm app. Seriously. First of all, just download it. You don't need to use my promo code or whatever. It will help you girl boss your way into a new life. You just decide, that work that you're putting off, that thing that you need to do. And it's not even that it's so hard, but you're so blocked on it. Just try this. Just try it. Decide how much time you would like to work on it. Don't go more than an hour, because if you're super blocked, that's too much. So let's say you decide, okay, you know what? 40 minutes. Yeah, I'd like to start. Okay. Pull up the Brain.fm app. It'll immediately ask you what type of music you want. So just choose that. But then it'll say, so how long? Hit 40 minutes and just let that focus music play and make a commitment. You won't do anything else but that blocked task until the focus music stops playing. Just try it. Just try it. It will change your life. Now, if you want the premium thing, you get some discount. Is it 10 or 20%? I think it's 20%. Yeah. Okay. If you use the code, I think you have to go to their website, maybe. But at checkout, if you use the code Gen That is Jen with one N. JENF. You will get a 20% discount if you want the premium. I like that because you can download. I use it a lot on planes, and you can have downloads, and it has other stuff. So get your 20% discount code GenF with the brain.fm app. Okay, this is an intervention. This episode is an intervention. You all here's what this phenomenon is. Here's what I see happening with you guys. A lot of times, because you are living this unnatural life where you don't have a support system, also you don't have a village and natural rhythms to help you maintain a routine. So let me give you one example of that. It used to not be so hard to not stay up too late, to enforce your bedtime. You know why? Because it got real freaking dark. You know how it is when you're camping. Usually you don't end up staying up that late. You kind of get on a go to bed with the sun, get up with the sun schedule, just because there's just nothing to do. It's so dark. Your eyes get tired of fighting for things to see in pure darkness when there's not electricity. So for all of our ancestors, for 99.99% of human history, they didn't have to use willpower to go to bed at a decent hour. The inky black darkness of the night sky helped them get that done. Now, we're very fortunate. We are so blessed that we can kind of do whatever we want in life. We can have electricity. We can extend our day as long as we want. That's amazing. But it uses all of these willpower reserves that we really weren't designed to have to use. So here's what happens. You are living in very unnatural circumstances, great circumstances, blessed circumstances, but unnatural. And what I see happening with you guys is you have a struggle that really what is wrong is that something major in your life needs to change. You need support that you're not getting, or you need something radical, like your husband just has to get a new job, or you need to move to a different house, or something major, like you're living in a mansion and it's too expensive and you should really downgrade. So, but it's major. It's you can't even go there. Mentally, you can't go there because you just think, your mind will not let you open that door. So what you do is you blame yourself. You tell yourself that you are not trying hard enough, because if you admitted that the problem is not you're just fine, actually, in terms of your level of effort. You're actually trying really hard. The problem is not you. It's your external circumstances. That is actually more overwhelming than blaming yourself. Because at least when you put all the blame on you, that is within your control. You can that gives you actually a kind of comforting feeling of control. You think, you know what? If I just watch 4 David Goggins videos and I just have that man yell at me about conquering my inner. I keep the podcast clean because you guys listen with kids around, but you know what David Goggins yells at you about. So if you think, if I just listen to a few people who yell at me, or actually with my fans, it's you know who your version of David Goggins is. You'll pull up the cottagecore influencers. That's what you do. See, I pull up David Goggins to have him scream at me about how, if you sleep a moment past 5 a.m., you just don't even want to win. Like, just admit it. You don't want to win. And, I'm like waking up. This is the first thing I see on my phone at 10:15 a.m. when I'm like not even really close to getting out of bed. But I love it. I love, because again, it gives me a sense of control. Like, yeah, the problem's me. That's what it is. I just need to blame myself more, and then we can fix this. No, what you guys do is you'll pull up the cottagecore people. You'll pull up, those, there is a category of people whose Instagram and their social media and their email list, this was very common in the blog world, very common, where they have a mental illness where they have a pathological need to virtue signal constantly. This was, for those of you who don't know, the mean streets of the mommy blogging world, 2003 to about 2010, 11. That was like people talking about living in Stalinist Russia. I mean, I know he like unjustly killed like 2 million people. I mean, I'm aware of what Stalin did, but you didn't read some of these bloggers. I mean, they psychologically destroyed about the same number of people.
Jeez.
These, Caitlin, however bad you think it is.
Worse.
Okay, actually, I'll give you an example. Now, I think there's a chance this woman listens to my podcast. So friends, look, it's all water under the bridge, okay? But this was years ago. So what people would do is they would find their crazy niche in parenting and they would fixate on it to a deeply mentally ill, obsessive degree. So for example, if you were a blogger who co-slept with your children, you could not just co-sleep with your children and shut the hell up about it. That is not something that you could do. That would not be possible in the blog world. You would have to let everyone know that they are the most vile human beings on planet Earth who actively want their children to have the worst lives ever if they don't also co-sleep. So I fell into the mean streets of the breastfeeding, attachment parenting. If I cared, I could find articles, some of them written by men, about how if you don't breastfeed your children to age 3, you are just not a caring mother, and you need to admit that. A man wrote that one. You need to admit that you don't really care about your children. And they would fixate on breastfeeding to the nth degree. They would fixate on attachment parenting. I mean, seriously, it was so deeply mentally ill. I did not understand how bad it was until we got past that phase. It was a culture of I think these women were very, very, very deeply isolated. Also, writing as a form of expressing yourself tends to attract people who are truly insane. And I say that as someone who has written 3 books. I mean, I've always considered myself a writer first. I am a writer. So I am speaking of myself and my people. Second only to stand-up comics. We are the craziest group of people you will ever meet. Writers very much live in their head. They have they have tendencies towards OCD, generalized anxiety disorder. So the blogging world really brought out the writing crazies. Whereas TikTok and Instagram, they bring out a whole different type of people, because these are people who are more visual. They're more connected to the real world. You know, they like video, they like seeing things. But people who really thrived in the blog world very much had that writer, overly cerebral, obsessive compulsive streak. And I think that's why there was such a high level of virtue signaling insanity in the blog world, because the people who were kind of the kings and queens of that world were deeply mentally ill. So I'm not wrong. And I'm in that category. Okay. I was one of them. So this woman who I like, if she's listening to this podcast and remembers that she wrote this, I like her. When I knew that I was surrounded by crazy people, and I was one of them, she was really into attachment parenting to an obsessive degree, meaning you have to wear your babies all the time. And they would find these studies that's like, we found a guy who was like the neighborhood peeping Tom flasher. You know, he would expose himself to people at the playground all the time, and, you know, carried a samurai sword with him everywhere. And you know what it turned out? It's his mom did not baby wear him. Yeah. And she didn't co-sleep. So that's actually what happens to your kids when you don't do the baby wearing. So she was in that attachment parenting crazy circle. She wrote this post. She is Catholic. We have a very high respect for Jesus's mom, and she wrote this post at Christmas, contemplating the manger scene. You know, so it's Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus lying in a manger. And if you are not Catholic, you really cannot, it cannot be overstated how much inspiration we derive from Jesus's mother, and what an incredible human being she was, and what an incredible source of pure love she was for God incarnate and for all of us. I mean, it cannot be overstated, the inspiration that we take from this woman and how perfect we see her to be. She wrote this post where at Christmas, saying that when she looks at the manger scene, it just makes her really concerned about what kind of parent Mary was, that she would set her baby down in a manger, that she wasn't doing baby wearing. That was the blogging world. That was a normal post. That was a Tuesday during the Christmas season. You would pull up your blog feed and it would be like, that is actually the most reasonable take I have seen so far today in the mommy blogging world. That the most holy, blessed mother, conceived without sin, the Immaculate Conception, she was not as good of a mom as this blogger. Who wears her babies. So seems like from the historical record, Mary did not do baby wearing. And so we might actually want to call the Pope about, one of the core doctrines of Catholicism, that God chose to have her conceived without original sin. We might want to flip that, actually, because she did not follow the attachment parenting standards of mentally ill people in 2006. So, we might want to do that. Okay. So that is what you guys do. There are still people who are kind of like that. There are people who they have a little bit more shame now. So they won't go that far. They won't go so far as to say the most holy blessed mother was a bad parent because she didn't do it my way. These days, you would get flamed off of Instagram if you said that. But they do something a little different. They'll just kind of talk about their lives, and they'll be like, wouldn't it be crazy if me and my 10 kids didn't have our 90-minute silent prayer and meditation session before 10 a.m. each morning? Wouldn't that be crazy? Can you even imagine? That would be so nuts, right? It would be so crazy. And just or you guys will follow the kind of people who say, listen, guys, I got to be real, okay? They're on stories, they've got the camera on selfie mode. Okay, you know what? It's time to keep it real. I'm going to show you my mess. Look at what my kids did to this house. Real life moment. And you're like, my house has never looked that good. That's like after my housekeepers come. That's, it'll be, there is one basket half full of laundry and 3 toys on the floor. I'm like, where's the dirty underwear on the kitchen table? This is nothing. The Fulwilers could crush this so fast. So you guys follow people like that. They are not as mentally ill as the blog world crazies of that era, but they get under your skin, and it's a payoff for you guys. The reason you follow these people, also the marriage people, they're like, listen, this is my 5th post today about what an incredible marriage my husband and I have. And that we really do have an incredible marriage, and there's no tension there, And I am definitely not going to get divorced, get tatted up, shave my head, and join a lesbian biker gang in 15 years. No, because I'm 2 years into my marriage, and let me just tell you, I am solid in it. That's why I do 5 posts a day on Instagram about it, because there are no issues, none within this marriage. So you guys follow people like this. The reason you do is because I think there are a few reasons, but I think you get a payoff from this because they make you feel like all of your problems are your fault. They make you feel like you are not trying hard enough. You think, well, if I did what that marriage influencer did, if I, washed my husband's feet as soon as he came through the door every day, but that would be hard to squeeze that in because that would be right in the middle of our 3-hour arts and craft time. And see, right after that, we go into the family read aloud of Victorian literatures. Like when would maybe I could do it later. Okay. Yeah, we could do it after the family scripture reading. Maybe that's when we could fit that in. It is actually comforting to you to believe that if you just tried harder, like these people you see on social media, it would solve all your problems, because the alternative is scarier to you. Hit the I need a second to phrase this sound effect. If you come to the realization that there's actually nothing wrong with you, this is just who you are. These faults, these flaws that you think that you need to resolve and you need to try so much harder on, they're just quirks. This is not some great sin. This is not some terrible thing. It's just how you're wired. Everyone has certain things that they're not great at, and they're never going to be great at. And the issue is not that they're not trying hard enough. This is just they're not wired to be good at this. They're never going to be good at this. And if you were to accept that this is one of those areas, it's just not your thing. You're just never going to be good at it. Then you would realize something about your external circumstances have to change to support you. And that is very scary. Because what are you going to do? I mean, unless you are one of my billionaire listeners, if you're a billionaire, I mean, money really does solve everything. Let's face it. It doesn't make you happy, but it will literally solve 99% of your problems. Mm-hmm. So if you're one of my billionaire listeners, then you're probably not overwhelmed by this. And you know what's interesting? I always say, I'm not rich, but I am rich adjacent. We have a lot of rich friends. And one of they are much more likely. They are much more likely to accept that certain things that aren't working are not due to a personality flaw on their part, and it's just like, my circumstances need to change. This is overwhelming. Something has to change about my external environment to allow me to thrive. My rich friends are much more likely to get to that place because they can afford to make the change. So, for example, if let's say the yard is an absolute mess, it just looks like a white trash yard like mine. One time we saw pictures from our backyard, and Joe actually said, he's like, when were the kids at a trailer park? And we have relatives who have, no judgment. I mean, I have relatives who've lived in trailer parks, but Joe was just like, when did they go there? It was literally our backyard, guys. It was our backyard. We were very overwhelmed. The backyard's a mess, and the house is a mess, and you have this room that has been unfinished for 3 years, and there are exposed wires. Well, if you're a billionaire or if you have a high net worth, you can just say, you know what? I should hire a lawn guy. I'll ask Buffy next door who does their lawn, and I'll hire them. And let's get a contractor in here to finish that room and get some housekeepers. Okay. Problem solved. No more problem. Now, if you are not able to throw endless amounts of money at the situation, it does require an enormous amount of creativity and brainstorming and partnering with your family, being collaborative to solve these problems. And that is why when you are broke, it is very easy to fall into a lot of self-blame. And now, let me speak to my broke listeners for a minute. I spend a lot of time speaking to my billionaire listeners. Like, let me speak. Hit the broke listeners' music. Oh. Music, not the the music. The right. Broke listeners, listen. If you are broke, I want you to be careful. I want you to watch out for something. First of all, my comedy millions have not come in. And I just spent a whole lot of money getting back from Minneapolis starting at 5:00 this morning. So I'm also broke adjacent. I live in a strange place. I'm rich adjacent and I'm broke adjacent. I just had to spend thousands of dollars on a lens that I'm using for this podcast. I'm broke adjacent. But seriously, I mean, we Joe and I have spent many years in the place where it's like the car just broke down. And the upshot of that is that we just don't have a car now because there is no discussion of having $500 to get it repaired. Like, all accounts are overdrawn. We're playing shell games with moving money around to different places. And I remember, we're a little bit out of this phase now, but I remember there was like a type of cheese at the grocery store that it was kind of a small amount, like amount the size of your hand, and that was $5. And I was like, that's outrageous. Like, that is so far out of the budget. Like, there's no way. Now, luckily, even though the comedy millions haven't come in, I can get the $5 cheese now. So honestly, I feel like I have enough. Like, this is, but I want to establish I have been there. I have been in the account is overdrawn. Most things got paid, but then you just realize the electricity bill has not cleared and the account is overdrawn. And you're like, are they going to let me overdraw it more? Or one time I got that answer when I was trying to homeschool. I was having a very bad day. I had just read some blog by some insane person who, of course, told me, I was doing it wrong. And probably the reason that my son chose to cover his ears and scream when I tried to have us say a little inspirational motto. He literally did this. He would cover his ears and scream because he wouldn't say an inspirational homeschool motto at the beginning of the day. I'd probably read some blog post about the issue is that you're not still breastfeeding him. He's only 9 years old. How could you neglect him? And I was in the middle of that, and our electricity got shut off because they wouldn't let me overdraft the account anymore. So, for my broke listeners. Is the music still going?
No.
Okay, let's start it again.
All right.
For my broke listeners, I want you to watch out for something. The more broke you are, the more you shut down the hope that your external circumstances could change. Because you have had so much no money for so long that the part of your brain that thinks of getting help, getting new resources, buying that thing that would make your life easier, that part of your brain atrophies. That is neuroscience, that if you never think a certain direction, if you stop using certain parts of your brain, you use it or lose it. You do lose that part of your brain. And when you are very poor for a very long time, you really do lose those neural pathways that say, you know what, let's hire someone to deal with this. This is too, I can't do this. This is too much for me. And so one of the things that can keep you in a cycle of being in a bad place is that you learn to self-blame because you have forgotten that it is even possible to change your external circumstances. So let me give you an example of, so when I was in homeschool circles, for example, these women were very broke. There's a lot of no money in homeschool circles, at least my homeschool circles. And so you'd see these women, for those of you who aren't in these circles, I mean, you'll see how wild this is, that they'd have all these kids. And because they were listening to influencers, they would do this very overly complicated homeschool system, and it would take up an enormous amount of their time. And it's very hard to keep your house clean when your kids are home all day. It's much easier, I find, when they go to school, that is much easier. But it's hard when they're home all day. I'm recording this in summer. For those of you who are listening to it when it comes out, we're all living in filth. We're living in absolute squalor because we're like, why would I clean? Why would I clean? It's just going to get trashed in 5 minutes. So I give up. And, the upshot is I think we will be able to be on Hoarders at the end of this summer. I think we'll be able to be on that show. And maybe, we'll get some fame out of this. Maybe they'll pay us. So these moms would be so overwhelmed with all of this stuff. And to any outsider, it would be like, dude, you have 11 kids and your oldest is 9. I mean, these people, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm kind of not kidding. So you had a bunch of twins in there. And, you know, and like you adopted 3 special needs children from Haiti. And like, God bless you. You have a great life. You have a great family. But I am only exaggerating a tiny amount when I tell you that I have talked to women who that is kind of their setup. Their husband is a youth minister who makes $38,000 a year. And they'll say, Jen, I just spent some time on Instagram. You know, I follow that Christian influencer that, you know, she spends some time with the scriptures every morning, and she and her 2 children are like, she keeps her house really, really clean. And it just made me realize I'm so mad at myself that I didn't get up at 3 a.m. to do my morning routine that I would need to do to keep this house straight. You know, yesterday, you know what I did, Jen? I really have to repent of this. I took 12 seconds to stare out my window. I did. And I know that's why my house is a mess. It really is. That's why my house is a mess, because I'm not trying hard enough. And if I hadn't taken that 12 seconds to stare out of a window, maybe we wouldn't be living in the situation that we're living in. And I really resolved. I've been getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but you know what I did? The other day, I hate myself for it, but I slept in. I did, Jen, I did it. I slept in until 5:45 in the morning. And just because, you know, one of my kids needed to talk to me and I was up with the baby until 2 a.m., that's no excuse, because my goal is actually to get up at 4 a.m. because that's what I would need to do, you know, to really have the house in the shape that I need it, and then do all the laundry and all of that. And dead serious, guys, dead serious. They would be in these types of situations and say, yeah, it's just kind of relief to know that the problem is me. Yeah, I just, you know, if I hadn't slept in till 5:45, if I hadn't been so lazy, then maybe things would be getting done around here. It is so hard for me. For those of you who do this, and I know you guys listening, I mean, you don't have quite that situation, but you are not as far from that as you think. You have a much crazier life than you realize you do. And like with this person, these types of people, I wanted to yell at them, the problem is not you. The problem is not you. I should say it again. The problem is not you. Like for that person, here's what I would like to say to this fictional person that I have created. The one with they're homeschooling, they're broke, they have 11 kids. I would say, let's talk about what you really need to thrive as a real human being and not a robot. Stop assuming that you are a robot who is programmed to be perfect in every single area of life. Ladies, I beg of you, stop treating yourself like you are a robot who is programmed to be perfect in every area of life. You are human. You have flaws. And the goal is not to perfect every single one of the flaws you ever have, but to craft a life that helps you thrive within those flaws. That is the goal. I just see you guys do this all the time. You are expecting yourselves to be perfect robots. And that's not good for your family. Because then that also leads you to be fake and weird with your family. Because you're just like constantly pretending to be good at things you're not, pretending that you're someone you're not. So what I would, if I knew that fictional person who I just created, I would say, can we be real for a second about what you need as a real human being? You need not 1 nanny, not 2 nannies, not 3 nannies. You need 4 nannies minimum, full time, and like good ones, you know, really good nannies. You need 4 nannies. You need a personal chef. If you're going to consider homeschool, and guys, don't get attached to your school choices. That is another thing, and that's not pro or anti homeschool, public school. Just people get attached to their school choices. If your school choices are not working for you, don't stick with it out of fear. I've seen that a lot in both directions, both in the homeschool world and in the school world. do not make school choices out of fear. Because that's another thing that these women, some of them, it's like, look, you're not cut out for homeschool, okay? You hate it. Like, you want to die every day. Send your kids to school, okay? Honestly, you will have more energy to be a better parent for them. And again, I want to be very clear. Some people love homeschool, but I did see some people that it was like, you are expecting yourself to be a robot here. It's time to call it. It's time to call it that this isn't working for you. So I would say to that woman, you need 4 nannies for homeschool. You need, with 11 kids, you need 2 tutors minimum to help you run your homeschool, to organize the steps. Just like put pencils out and papers and clean up. You need daily housekeeping. And you need, I don't know, maybe you need a different house that has like kind of a backyard area where the kids can play more. And a personal chef would certainly not hurt. And let's just make a list. You know what I would do? I would show up to her house with a whiteboard that is 12 feet long and 8 feet high. And I would say, we are going to do a brain dump of everything you really need, of the support that you really need. So we would get all that down. 4 nannies, that, all of that. And then we would say, okay, so you can't afford anything on this list. And that's why you guys avoid it. That's my broke listeners. That's why you avoid it. Because then you think, well, that's depressing. Or, well, now that's really depressing, because now this is just a list of stuff I can't have. But no, this actually should be inspirational, because when you get that list down on the whiteboard of the support that you would actually need to thrive as a real human being with real flaws in your current life, it makes you realize how much you're doing. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. So this means I'm doing the work of 4 nannies and 3 tutors and a personal chef and a chauffeur. And whoa. So it should, first of all, make you really encouraged to see how much work you are doing. But then you scale it back from there and you say, okay, let's look at the pros and cons of my personality type. So let's say this fictional mom that we're talking about. Let's say she actually loves to cook. That is her thing. It really blesses her. She loves trying new recipes and expanding the recipes for her big family and trying new things. So let's scratch personal chef off the list. I mean, if she makes her comedy millions, then maybe she would also get a personal chef. But right now, that's actually not a huge pain point for her, okay? So cooking, maybe she doesn't need a personal chef. Maybe she even takes off chauffeur, but she thinks, you know what? Yeah, I could use a chauffeur because I'm just constantly in the car. The little bit of free time I have, I'm in the car. But she thinks, okay, all right, you're right, Jen. I can't afford a chauffeur. But could I sit down with each kid and look at the activities they're in and just say, does this really bless you? I mean, do you love it? Is this a passion? And if it's not, we are not going to waste our time on it. We are going to be countercultural and say, I don't put my kids in activities that they are just meh about. Can we make a space for that in this culture? Pulling kids out of activities that they don't care about? We need a cultural revolution where it is no longer the norm to waste everybody's time, the parents' time and the kids' time, having the kids in activities that they just don't really care about. Right? Kids learn teamwork in sports. No, they don't. My parents had that philosophy. They made me play sports, and I was so terrible. I just dragged down the team. I'm fine with teamwork, but it is not because I was forced to suck at softball for 4 seasons. That had nothing. You guys need to question these assumptions. You have to have kids play sports so they learn teamwork. How about living in a house with other human beings? That is where they learn teamwork, okay? Yeah. If your child is a feral child who lives like Tarzan, if they just live in your backyard and they swing from tree to tree and they live with the monkeys out there, then yes, put them in sports. I think it would help them. I think it would help them socialize and learn teamwork. But living in a home with other people that teaches them teamwork, you don't need to waste your time in sports that your kids don't care about. So we're at the whiteboard with this overwhelmed mom. And so that's what I would say. Okay, yeah, of course, you can't afford a chauffeur, but that function, that pain that the chauffeur would take out of your life, how can we resolve a little bit of that in different ways? So that mom would go to the kids And each one of them, she'd say, look, I want you to thrive. I want you can do anything. I mean, this really, I believe in your dreams. Go for it. Dream big. And let's try different things. Let's try different activities or whatever. But let's only pursue things that you have a strong reason to believe that you might really love. And if you don't love it, please be honest with me immediately. There's a business saying, be wrong as fast as you can. Let us be wrong as fast as we can. If we get you in guitar lessons and you realize it's not landing for you, this is not, then let me know as soon as you know, because we don't need to waste our time with this. So maybe that mom, she doesn't get a chauffeur, but she finds that quite a few of her kids are in activities that nobody cares about, and they're kind of wasting their time. And so they end up doing something else that involves less driving. So this is what you do. You go through thing by thing. So you say, for example, we can't hire a tutor, but let's just be open-minded. Should she send the kids to school? Would it be the end of the world? Should she, just consider it? And maybe they decide, no, we really love homeschooling. This is definitely for us. Okay, could you research more independent-based curriculum? Joe and I did that. We had some curricula. Actually, Joe developed it himself, and it was very independent learning based, because Joe is actually the ultimate example of not believing that the issue is that he needs to try harder. When he had to briefly take over homeschool, when I got really busy with some career stuff, and he with no guilt, the man just said, oh, I'm not going to teach 5 hours a day. Like, I have a life, and there's not even a chance. So he developed this independent learning based system. We put it on YouTube. If you Google Joe schooling, all one word. And it was so solid. It required maybe an hour a day of our time, maybe. And when our kids went to school, they were way ahead. And to the, they're in school now, and immediately they all got straight A's. I mean, it was it was incredible academically. His system, very outside of the box. So that's an example of him going the opposite direction of that mom. It was killing him to try to homeschool 5 hours a day, and he said, no, the problem is not me. I just don't want to do this. I don't have the personality type for this. I hate this, and I'm not going to do this. I am going to change my external circumstances. And at that time, we couldn't afford a tutor or whatever. So he said, I am going to develop an independent learning-based system, and I'm going to do it without guilt. I'm not going to say that I failed. I should have tried harder. He's like, no, I was trying, and I hated it. It was just too much of a time sink. I have a life. I have other things I want to do. Be like Joe. Ladies, get yourself out of that self-blame. Get yourself out of try harder mentality. Be like Joe and say, no, I did try and I hate it. It's not for me. And guess what? I'm going to do something really radical here. I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because there's nothing to feel guilty about. If you just tried to do something in your family and you just realize it's not for me. I'm not good at this. My brain doesn't work this way. It is so good for your family when you just accept that with peace. That's the best thing you can do for your family. Because you know what? When you mire yourself in guilt and shame, you're not solving the problem, because you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You're trying to fit the square peg of your crazy brain into the round hole of your circumstances. And it's never going to fit. It's never going to work. And then meanwhile, your family's like, wow, I wish we could get this problem solved, but we can't, because mom is over there self-flagellating and crying about how terrible she is. And if she could just relax and be like, hey, could we strategize about like how we could get the laundry done? Because I've been trying for 14 years and it's, I've never gotten good at it. So I don't know, maybe it's time to call it. Maybe it's time to call it that the issue is not my effort, but that we need to figure out a whole different system here. When you let go of guilt and stop telling yourself that the problem is you, and be like Joe and be like, I have zero guilt about this. Zero. I know who I am. I know the few things I'm good at. I know the many things I'm not good at. And all of that energy that I used to put into guilt and shame, I'm going to use it for creative solutions. I'm going to use it for creative solutions to my problems. because that's the thing. Guilt and shame, that's a very mentally taxing way to live. It is a very emotionally and spiritually taxing way to live. When every day you walk around, you're like, well, yep, I'm terrible. Look at me. I'm just falling down on my commitments again. I'm just not getting it done. I made this mistake. I made that mistake. I just can't get it right. And now everything's falling apart because I'm not trying hard enough. That's exhausting. You will not see solutions. Good ideas will not come to you. And how can you love your family? Do you want to be in a room with someone who has that mentality? Well, think about this. Your kids end up being in the same room with you. You are making people be in the same room with someone who is drowning in guilt and shame, and that is not fun. It is so good for your family when you say, whoa, I just realized the problem is not me at all. My brain just doesn't work this way. I'm not good at it, and that is totally okay. And in this newfound freedom that I have encountered, thanks to the Jen Fulwiler show, which I cannot believe is free, I am going to find creative solutions to my problem. And yes, I'm one of Jen's broke listeners, so I can't just go out and hire people to make this problem go away. But I will get out my whiteboard and I will write down all of the people I wish I could hire and all of the things I wish I could buy that would make these many problems go away. Like I'm terrible at laundry. I'd love to hire a laundry service, whatever. And then I will step back in this spirit of freedom and in this spirit of feeling great about myself and being proud of who I am. And with that renewed energy, I will say, you know what, how can we replicate this? I can't hire a chauffeur, but what is something similar I could do? I can't hire a laundry service exactly. I can't hire a full-time laundry professional, but once a week, could I send out some of the laundry? Could we scrape together that money? Like, I'll sell some stuff on eBay. Could we use that to do one of those pickup laundry services, just not for all the laundry, but for some of it? You will find that the creative solutions rush in like a dam breaking when you stop living in guilt and shame. So stop telling yourself that the problem is that you are not trying hard enough. That is not, I mean, it is very unlikely to be the issue. Listeners of other podcasts, that actually might be it. I mean, I could actually name some podcasts that's like, yeah, I think that's actually the issue with their listeners, but not my listeners. You guys are crushing it, and I will be back with you next week here on the Jen Fulwiler Show.